This is going to be our latest project, and you can't see it because outside is too bright. Okay, there we go. So if I cover that up, we can see the edge of this frame that is on this main port, and you see all the sealer up in here. And if I push a little bit, you might be able to see daylight. So it's just sitting, the port itself is just pressed in to the side of the hull, and it has this frame that holds it in place. So I'm going to try to press it out, and then we're going to replace this lens because it's got cracks and it's all crazed, and the whole thing's been leaking. So that's what we're going to do. This is the aftermath of the deconstruction of the window. Here's a look at the old sealant that was surrounding everything. This dirty part was up against the wood, and that's where the water was getting in and doing its thing. So this thicker bit, that's how thick it was at the top of the window, and this was at the bottom. So it wasn't really centered in the opening. So I'm going to try to do something about sorting that out. And all of this little bits was because I had to use the Dremel to grind out the plastic. I'll try to show you that here in a second. Right, here we are with the pieces reassembled as it was in the boat. So this unit comes from the port side in the salon, and this top frame, this piece here, is on the inside of the boat, and the screws that go through this frame pull the port light itself up against the side of the boat and hold it in place. So this thin piece, frame piece, is on the inside, presses against the inside of the boat, and the rest of this is on the outside, pressing on the outside of the boat, and it makes a sandwich against the two. So that was fairly straightforward. So we kind of saw that already on the boat, but it's just a plastic piece, so you got to be gentle with that. Now, this piece was a composite unit, and it's several pieces. It was put together out of several pieces, but not designed to come apart. Basically, it was glued together. And in these corners, in here, all the corners is where it was still very sufficiently glued. Along the center, the glue had let loose, and it was loose in both the top and the bottom in the center, and on this side it was glued in place. These ends, there's a piece on the edge that connects the end, this little white bit here, and this piece is also glued in place. So I just had to cut those down the center, and I just took a hacksaw blade and cut down through the center of that piece to separate these two frame pieces so that I could get the lens out. And after I had committed to cutting both sides of that's when I found out the lens was glued into place, so it wouldn't come apart. And I spent a lot of time scraping with just with a razor, and then pressing until I got it to come apart. And on this end, things just started to break. So you can see there's a piece missing in the corner there. This piece of the lens was stuck. It was still glued on the inside of the rail. And you can still see there's a bit of an off-colored section in there. That's what's left of the plastic. And I just had to Dremel it, just grind it away with the Dremel to get it out of there. Unless there was some sort of solvent or something that could have dissolved the glue, I didn't have any other option. Okay, but so I went through that on basically all four corners of of the port light here and broke out the corners, so I don't have to kind of guess what the shape and size of it was. But this is where we are with getting it disassembled. And let's see, I'll take this piece over and show you how this stuff was arranged. So this would have been the sealant along the top up here, and it was just like this. Basically, these bits were down in these grooves, and that was the sealer, clearly leaking, so that's not good. And then there was this bit of sort of gasket, I'm going to call it. So the lens went in here up against the outside of this, and then this gasket was pressed in the rest of the opening, taking up the space that was there. So filling up the rest of the opening against the bit of lens. The plastic that I'm using to replace the lens is a little bit thicker, and I don't know that this is going to fit in there anymore. So I've got to sort out what to do about that. I kind of feel like I'm just going to fill the whole thing with 4200, because I'd rather be able to take these apart in the future, and I'd want to, instead of gluing these bits together like this, I'll probably, since this is a nice solid piece of plastic now, I think I'm going to drill this out and put a screw on each side and make a connecting piece so I can screw the top and bottom parts of the frame together. And that way I would be able to take out and replace the lens if it cracks again or whatever. Okay, and then so this is the new lens. So used the old lens that came out as a template and traced that, and then to get the corners, I just set the frame pieces on here and used the shape of the corner to kind of guess and trace, you know, because I lost pieces. This one was okay, this came out, but I lost pieces over here, so I used the corners of the frame to try to decide how that shape should be. And we've got the new lens cut out, and here's the new lens inserted into the frame. So I've got some fitment issues on the size and the shape of the corners. These aren't lining up exactly. If you can see the cracks and things, this, you know, over 40-year-old plastic did not survive the disassembly very well. So I've got some epoxy work and sanding to do. I'm going to paint everything white, and you can see the gap here on this end as well. So just it's not quite fitting. So I've got to continue to trim some off the lens until those gaps will close up, because that should be completely closed. And the way we can tell is this frame on the inside is still a complete unit, and the screw holes have to line up. So I'll use this frame for the inside as the guide to get the lens to the right shape, so the outer frame will close up and the screw holes will line up. And when that's all done, I'll be ready to get everything cleaned up, get a coat of paint on it, and put it back together. And I'm just going to use 4200, I think. Still trying to decide what's going to be the best to put this together. But put the lens in the frame, and then the frame back in the side of the boat. Put the screws back on the inside frame, and that'll be done. It'll last for as long as it lasts, and I'll try to put it back together so it's easier to take apart than it was this time. So when it needs to be redone in probably a couple of years, it'll be easier, hopefully. There's a lot more to do with this, but that's good progress. It was really difficult to get apart, and you can see how much space there is in there. We're gonna have to fill that. And one thing I noticed, like right now, it's sitting really low in the opening. There was hardly any sealer down at the bottom, and then a huge gap at the top that was trying to be filled up. So I'll try to even that out when I do it this time. Maybe have some standoffs or something to hold the window in the center, something like that. I don't know, got to think about it. But got a new lens, and we're in the phase of putting things back together, but this is going to take a while. So I'm just going to cover the opening for now and work on it over the next couple days. Over here I've got some glass cut. I'm going to reinforce the places where I broke little bits off or created cracks taking it apart. Got the epoxy, I guess it's resin, it's fiberglass resin. It's these little one-use packs. There you go. So I like those. Just mix a little bit. I also have the pumps for the big ones for bigger jobs, but works great. Very windy today, but we're gonna try to do this work anyways. So this is where the the port goes in the main salon. So it's on the port side. Just a big port light. Can't open it, so it's just the frame that goes in here. A couple of things. So it's separated here. You can see the damage in the wood. So this is from the leaking. So we got to get all that dug out. We're going to fill that in with resin, and hopefully you can see that it moves also. So I want to pull this back together as much as possible, and I'm going to fill it with some glass and the resin, pull it back together, hold it with a clamp, and then I also got some screws that after it sets up, I'm going to put the screws in to give it a mechanical thing as well. But I was noticing the other day, like this is the old outline of where the frame on the window sat, so it was very low in here on the bottom, and then up top almost nothing was grabbing the fiberglass. This little line here, this little dirty line, shows it was just barely grabbing the edge of the fiberglass on the inside, and this cutout is just so rough and a mess. So I'm going to fill this up, squeeze this back together. I'm going to run a layer of glass all the way around the inside surface, all the way around, if I can get that done. So I'm probably going to have to take off my water barrier here to get that done, which I kind of don't want to do because it's so windy today. But kind of in a the show must go on situation, so we'll see what we can do. I'm about ready to start working with the resin. I'm going to use the big tubs and the pumps. It'll be one pump of resin and one pump of hardener. I've got everything in this sort of contained little work area here, so hopefully I don't make any messes. Got everything over here protected. And the bottom, I think, is going to be fairly straightforward. Gravity's going to help me out. Filling on the top is going to be a little more difficult. So I think what's going to happen is I'll wind up working in just a few inches space at a time from one side to the other, and see how that goes. But whatever it is, it's going to be better than it was. So we're cleaned up and ready to start adding new resin to the area. So using the 406 here, I'm able to make it very thick and pasty, and then I can push it up into the overhead. So I'm just making little batches, one little batch at a time, and working it in to fill up the spots. And because it's so thick, it's working pretty good. I've stuffed a bunch in there. And now the moment of truth. We're gonna clamp this corner and let it set up. Well, the good news is that some stuff squished out, so that means there was stuff in there, right? So we'll redistribute that, and then we just gotta wait for this to cure. I'm gonna add one more round of resin on everything to make sure all this glass mat is fully covered. But this is what I wanted to see. I wanted to get the spots filled up, pull it back together, and then I'm going to work now with all this glass that I'm adding to give myself a nice smooth surface on the inside that the sealant can bond to. And everything that's hanging down will get cut off or sanded off a little bit later when it starts to set. This worked reasonably well, actually. Contained all the mess. It was in one place. That's good. I added resin and a layer of glass to the edge of this inside frame that has wax paper on it to help with the curing process. And this is a cover that goes out in the cockpit, and it was a mess, so cleaned that up and I put a layer of resin on both sides, so that'll get painted, well, all this will get painted white. But so now I'm going to pull the paper off of this. Let's see if it will, see if I can do it one-handed. It usually releases pretty well. So it's nice and smooth. It feels good. So then I'll come behind it and I'll re-drill all of these holes. I'm going to sand all this excess off, and it will just be reinforced. Since it's a little old and a little brittle, and I can't do this one-handed anymore. So that worked reasonably well. I'm happy with that. Got a nice consistent smooth finish, so I don't have to take away too much material here. I'll just get rid of this excess on the inside edges and things and straighten those edges back up again. And I've got really old plastic that's now been reinforced with really new plastic. So that should work great. I added these screws in the corner here to give it something else to help hold it together besides just the epoxy in the glass, since that's the spot where it was having trouble before. I wanted to reinforce it. That's focus. There we go. So the next job is to open this all up put the sander on it and get it smoothed down. Get ready. Getting closer to being able to put this back together. This is the new lens and one part of the frame. So what I've done here is I've cut just so that it will fit inside the frame. If I put this in here, not very easy to do one-handed, but that fits inside the frame like that. So I've cut the protective paper off of that part that's inside the frame, and then I've added the tape here too. And the idea is I'm going to prime this edge to be a UV protector for the 4200 that I'm going to use to seal this into the frame. And then I can put 4200 in the frame, squish this in there, add some more if I need to, smooth it out, pull the blue tape off while the 4200 is moist, and that will give me a decent looking edge after the frame's been assembled. I want to leave the paper on for as long as possible. So we'll use the blue tape to get rid of the 4200, and then we'll see if there's anything else to touch up or anything else to do before we commit to taking the protective backing off of the new plastic lens. So we are in the reassembly phase for the port. The boat got fixed up and painted today. It's ready to accept the new port whenever this is done. So we just got to keep moving step by step on this and get this put back together. These are the pieces and the parts. We're ready to reassemble. And this is just white primer. These have been primed and painted. These are the outside pieces. This is the inside piece. So these will be affixed to the lens. I made these little brackets to replace the plastic. It was a piece of plastic glued between this end and this end to hold the frame together. So now I've got a little piece of metal with a couple of screws, and the whole thing will be put together with 4200 on the inside of this joint in here, with the lens pushed into this little opening in the frame. And we'll just see how it goes. This was not designed to be taken apart. The way it was glued together was sort of a full unit, replace the full unit kind of thing. Nothing wrong with that, except it's 45 years old now. 45? Yeah, 45 years old. And unfortunately, this plastic broke in a lot of places. So I've reinforced everything with fiberglass to see if this is gonna work or not. I didn't spend a lot of time making it look exactly like the plastic used to. I just wanted to make sure it's going to be functional and close up the big hole that's in the side of the boat right now. So let's work on putting this together and see what we get. And one other note, I did remember to trace the lens, so I have a head start on the other side. I'll cut this one out and start getting ready to disassemble and do this same project on the starboard side as well. But I might take a couple of weeks off because this was a lot of work. I did a test here of how much 4200 to put into the track, and I used this spare piece of plastic to press it in there and see if I was putting it, because I want to try to put in just enough to get it sealed in there without overfilling it. And the first thing that happened was I realized I meant to tape this outside edge. So I'm going back and taping the outside edge so that after I press the lens in, I'll have the ability to remove excess 4200 so I don't get it on the outside of the frame so much. And then I remembered why I wanted to leave the paper on the lens. So there's tape here also. So I'll use the tape to get the 4200 off, and then I want to paint the whole thing one more time to try to protect any 4200 that's showing on the outside. Give it some UV coverage. Alright, both edges are taped. And moving on. Alright, the moment of truth. Put it together, put the brackets on, see what kind of mess I make. I've been working with just a razor blade to make sure that there's no gaps or openings, and to just remove excess material. Got the metal brackets on, so it's a single unit now. And next I'm going to peel off the blue tape to try to take away any extra sealant before it gets too set up. And then we're just going to leave it alone and let it set up. Well, that's it. This is the inside view. So these are the brackets that I added to put the frame pieces back together. Came out reasonably well. So the next thing will be to let this completely cure and then coat a paint to cover up the edge of the 4200, and then we'll be able to pull the paper off. And I might wait to pull the paper off until I've put it in the boat, actually, so I don't get sealant or anything, or scratch it or anything like that until it's installed. Okay, so have a window again. Okay, it's time for the final coat of paint, so I brought everything outside. Put the final coat of paint on, and then we should be ready to get things back installed on the boat. And safety first, or if you breathe too much overspray and then feel like crap for 2 days, then wear the respirator for the rest of the paint. It is time to start working on the installation. So on the boat, Tuesday night, and got the opening prepped. That's black plastic over the top of that, so we get that cleaned off, and we have the new window board right there on top of the hatch. We're gonna break out the 4200 and put it back in the boat, and then this will be basically done. Will it still leak? I don't know, maybe, but it got done. And after so many pieces broke on it when I started taking the thing apart, I'm just glad to have it back together. It took about a week. I think it's been a week working on this, so glad to be done soon. Okay, still fits. I'm using these little metal angle pieces. They're bent to be 1/4 inch, and that's getting it a lot more centered in the opening. So that should make that's the other clip there. That should make the amount of sealant on the top and bottom a lot more equal to what it was. And also gives more coverage on the outside, gives more coverage for the edge of the piece to go against the side of the boat. So I like that when I pull on it, the light disappears. That's good. Fill it up with 4200 and get it in place. Good morning. It's time to peel off the paper.
I like it.
And now for the inside. Let's see. Don't know where to start here. Anywhere I can get an edge is going to be good enough. There we go. It's very clear. No scratches. Awesome. Beautiful morning out there. It's not exactly perfect, but it's pretty good. And it is no longer scratched or crazed or cracked, and hopefully it doesn't leak. It's got 2 tubes of 4200 holding it together, so hopefully that will not leak. Okay, well, that's the end of the port project. Thanks for following along on a project. The next thing is to clean up, because I made a bit of a mess in here. And then go sailing. Right? It's very simple. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.